Assalamu alaikum everyone and welcome to another video with Learn with Larib. So today we will be discussing cerebellum. Now I will be integrating FCPS related MCQs into it. However, this video is suitable for MBBS and other exams as well since the basic concept is the same. So let's begin. This is the structure of cerebellum. This is a hand-drawn structure, so it is not that accurate, but it gives you an idea in the simplest form. So cerebellum consists of anterior posterior lobe, a flucconodular lobe, vermis, and then it is divided into hemispheres. There's a medial hemisphere, an intermediate hemisphere, and a lateral hemisphere. So this part is the vermis, and then it has a roof of fourth ventricle as well. This is the flocculonodular lobe. Other than that, we have the cerebellar peduncles. We have the superior cerebellar peduncle, we have the middle one and an inferior one. The middle and inferior are mostly involved in afferent pathways, that means input to the cerebellum, and the superior cerebellar peduncle is involved in efferent pathways, which means output from the cerebellum. As we all know, the basic function of cerebellum is that it modulates the movement and maintains the balance and control and coordination of the body. All right. So moving on to histology, we'll just go through the important points. It has three layers: the molecular layer, the Purkinje layer, and the granule cell layer. The molecular layer basically consists of stellate cells. It also has some parallel fibers, which are axons of the granule cells. The Purkinje layer consists of the fibers known as climbing fibers. Climbing fibers are mostly associated with the input through inferior cerebellar peduncle, and they are the largest CNS neurons. Cranial cell layer has the excitatory neurons, which are Mossy fibers. So this is an important point for MCQ. Please remember that. Now coming back to the cerebellum, let's see. So the middle cerebellar peduncle carries the fibers from contralateral side of the cortex to the cerebellum. The inferior cerebellar peduncle consists of the fibers coming from the spinal cord, which are relevant to the proprioception, so they send the fibers to the cerebellum. So corticocerebellar pathway, spinocerebellar, and then we have vestibulocerebellar as well as olivocerebellar. So the vestibular system sends its fibers to the flocculonodular lobe, and then these fibers are then sent back to the vestibular system. So this was the input or the efferent fibers coming into the cerebellum, and as we spoke, we have corticocerebellar, spinocerebellar, vestibulocerebellar, olivocerebral. So the fibers which carry are mostly climbing fibers. However, there's an MCQ asking the fibers carrying input from the olivary nucleus to the cerebellum. The correct answer is climbing fibers. Now coming to the output, the superior cerebellar peduncle carries the fibers for the output to the contralateral cortex via thalamus. So the fibers mainly travel from the dentate nucleus to the contralateral cortex via thalamus, so it will create a dendrothalamic pathway. Then to the brainstem, they are mostly to the red nucleus, basically sending pathways to the rubrospinal pathway. Cerebellum contributes to balance and coordinate those movements. That is why it will be sending fibers to the pathways. And then the vestibular system through the fastigial nucleus. So as I just mentioned, it sends the fibers to the already moving pathways like rubrospinal or corticospinal pathways. The main goal is to smooth and coordinate the movement, also to check if it is relevant to the intention. So basically, it's intention versus performance, which is checked by cerebellum. And once it checks, it also corrects the errors. Now coming to the lesions, always remember whenever there is a cerebellar lesion, it is always ipsilateral. So a lesion at right side will affect the right side of the body. A lesion in vermis is mostly associated with the posture, gait, and balance. If there is a lesion in the vermal area, it will result in motor ataxic gait. The anterior lesion is usually due to alcohol abuse causing gait ataxia. The posterior lesion, however, causes truncal ataxia, and this is an important MCQ. Now, coming to the hemisphere, if there is a lesion in the hemisphere, there will be intention tremors. Keep in mind that cerebellar lesion will not cause any kind of paralysis. However, there will be tremors. It will also result in dysmetria. The finger nose test we perform to check cerebellar function, the person will not be able to perform it. It will also perform dysdiadochokinesia. That means that the person will not be able to perform the test, the one we do with the supination and pronation of our hand. Person will also suffer from dysarthria, which is that there will be an asynergy of the speech, so it will disrupt the melody of speech. He'll also have a gaze dysfunction. Now, this one is specifically associated with the flocculonodular lobe, since we discussed that the flocculonodular lobe gets its fibers from the vestibular system and sends it to the vestibular system as well. So whenever we talk about nystagmus or gaze abnormality, it is related to the flocculonodular lobe. Also, the hypotonia or the pendular knee jerk motion. So, this was all about the lesions of the cerebellum. I would like to discuss another important topic, which is cerebellopontine angle, and we get a lot of MCQs from it as well. The structure of the cerebellopontine angle, it has the cranial nerve 7th, which is the facial nerve, and then the 8th cranial nerve, vestibular nerve, the 5th cranial nerve, cerebellar connection, and brainstem are nearby to this angle. So any lesion at this angle will result in cranial nerve deficits as well as cerebellar signs. If it is disturbing the facial nerve, there will be facial weakness. For 8th cranial nerve, as it is associated with hearing, there will be hearing loss, tinnitus, or vertigo. Now, if there is a lesion affecting the trigeminal nerve, there can be facial numbness. For cerebellar, we can have the different cerebellar signs, which can be a gait ataxia, intention tremors, etc., etc. Other point is if there is raised intracranial pressure, it can result in headache, nausea, and papilledema. So any MCQ mentioning any of these signs, especially these ones with this cerebellar connection issues, the lesion will always be in the cerebellopontine angle. So this was all about the cerebellum. We will be discussing basal ganglia next. And I use the most recommended sources, can be first aid, Kaplan, AA, Raffiullah, to revise. Also, I've studied thoroughly during my MBBS as well. So you don't need to worry about it. This is all from the most recommended sources and will be very helpful for you in the exam. Thank you, and don't forget to subscribe the channel.